Hey, Chris.
Yes, Craig.
I'm what you like to call a hardcore gamer.
Me too.
Resolution matters.
Frame rate 2.
But does it?
I don't know.
That's a good question. Thank you for joining us. This is the Craig and Chris Show, where we talk about stuff that interests us and
hopefully interests you.
That's right. And don't forget, we have our own Flipboard magazine at www.craigandchris.com/Flipboard. And you have to subscribe at craigandchris.com because that's where all the action is.
Yes.
And we stock bulk and awesome.
No.
And that time I did it on purpose.
Awesome in bulk. He'll get this.
Anyways, to the story.
Yes.
Frame rate matters.
Yes.
No. Resolution matters. That's the question.
Yeah.
Does it matter?
This console generation in particular.
Yeah, no kidding.
Has been loaded with controversy.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Especially Xbox One not being in 1080p, is in 1080p, not in 1080p, is in 1080p.
The question...
The key word
this
there
has come up a lot.
Yeah.
Is like the resolution and frame rate. Mm-hmm. Some people say 1080p, 60 frames per second must be.
Or bust. That's a hardcore gamer.
Yeah.
While others are like, I don't care.
Does it must be?
Does it must be? What? What did I say that? Was that my fault?
Does it? Does I'm asking the question.
Does it
must be?
No, well, here's the thing. I think people have certain expectations when it comes to consoles. Okay?
I would say because it's the next gen.
Yeah, well, when you call something next gen, if you want to put that label on it.
And the price tag.
And the price tag on it, it has to at least have hardware specifications. Where was I going with this? It has to have at least hardware specifications that are at or equal to circa within that year or previous. That was a really complicated way of saying, if you say an Xbox is a next-gen system, you don't make it 720p when you release it.
That was better, thanks.
Okay, sorry, I had to...
No,
it's got an expectation to it. You call it next-gen, and when your last system...
It should be better than current.
Yeah, exactly. Man, you're so good at this.
Both PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 are mostly 720p and frame rate whatever.
Right. Frame rate whatever. And that's what's funny is...
There are multiple frames on the screen.
They do happen in real time.
Yeah. But PlayStation does the 1080p.
You make your point first. I got you.
PlayStation 4's got the 1080p, and Xbox 360 or Xbox One doesn't?
It does. It supports 1080p.
Yes.
But not all the games
do.
Are in 1080 yet. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But we're not really answering the question, does that matter?
No.
It matters to consoles because there's an expectation there. But does it at the end of the day, when you're sitting down and playing it, does it matter if you're playing that game in 720p? Or does it matter if you're playing it in 1080p? Do you see a noticeable difference? Personally.
Frame rate you can.
Frame rate.
Frame rate you can.
I get that.
But actually, I'm going to just say this right now. There are some times where I prefer the less. Like, I prefer the 30 versus the 60. I think 60 sometimes can look too smooth and then just kind of takes me out of it.
You being a film guy would understand that.
Yeah. Sometimes I think the 30 kind of is the money on some games. Not all, but sometimes.
Well, it's like... It makes it uncomfortably fluid. If you get up there in the 60s...
That's a perfect way to put it.
If you get up there in the 60s for frame rate, it does get uncomfortably fluid. It's like this is just too crisp.
It's too crisp and my mind rejects it.
Yeah, it's like too crisp to be immersive.
But I don't know if you can see the difference with 1080p, 720p.
I think it depends on the size of your screen. Personally.
Yeah.
I mean, I think once you hit that...
Probably.
Once you hit that 40, 50-inch screen, then you really start to see...
All the people who can afford, like, multiple TVs to be set up for, like, we're going to test it.
Yeah.
Then good for you.
Then they'll probably see. I would prefer 1080p. I will complain to the ends of the earth that Xbox One isn't in 1080p, but that's not because I think 1080p actually adds a whole lot of value to the gaming experience. But the fact that you're paying $600 for something labeled next gen should not be up to speed, frame rate and resolution wise, with their last console, which is the 360, which was in 1080p.
It does ask the question.
And I got my Xbox One, by the way. I still like it. I'm not.
Yeah, we're not knocking.
I'm not just knocking.
We're just discussing the psychology of frame rate issues. And I have to admit, when I heard that, I was like, oh, really? Like, why?
Well, it's like, who...
I actually assumed that I assumed that 1080p was going to be a given on everything.
You know what my reaction was?
Because I'm stupid that way.
Yeah, you know what my reaction was? Somebody needs to get fired for that. That was my reaction. If somebody in their marketing department... Somebody in their marketing department needs to get fired for that.
Yeah.
Because it's the second I heard it, as a gamer who's been in the business, their target demographic, who buys all their games, who has an Xbox 360, the second that was said, I'm like, what?
Oops.
I mean, I'm not. It's like, what?
That's a mistake. Yeah, no, I agree.
Why would you? It doesn't even matter that it doesn't matter.
No.
At that point, it matters.
No, because it's like, it doesn't matter, but it does matter.
It doesn't matter, but it does.
Because I sat there thinking, well, if it can't keep up now, what about 10 years? Because that's the thing. Is when you buy a console, we argue this with the Steam boxes, is when you buy a console, you settle in for at least 5 years.
Yeah, usually. 4 or 5 years.
And if you're already behind the 8 ball...
well,
now...
But here's the thing, is they're not... The problem is that's the illusion it creates. They're not technically behind.
Yeah, exactly. It's all in your mind, but it matters.
It does matter. But see, because like the hardware is more than capable of handling it.
Yes.
It fully supports it.
And the games are fun so far.
But it's not there yet. Yeah. Like the developers aren't there yet.
It's like in the bargaining for your console's soul, you have one guy going, well, we got 1080p. And then you kind of look to the other guy and they go, sometimes. Then you look back, we've got remote play.
Now you are knocking the Xbox One.
No, I still like it, but
good
they are doing things that make it hard.
Well, and there was another article that actually I think I put on the Flipboard, CraigandChris.com/Flipboard, that has sales of the PlayStation 4 are outselling Xbox One's 3-1. And I think a lot of it has to do with this psychology. Personally.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's this whole marketing mindset that their target audience has gotten into over the past 6 months to a year, all the way leading up to the release. Because this wasn't the first ball they dropped with 720p. It was just another thing. It was the DRM licensing issue. It was the you can't buy used games. And then it was now we don't have 720p. It's just... It's his whole...
Well, it's like I was doing again. It's like you go, oh, well, we're going to have a streaming service where you can play different games. We call it PlayStation Now. And you go, that sounds cool. Then you look to Microsoft, and that's when you...
They're going to be like, you're going to have to buy that again on Xbox Live, even though you already bought it.
We don't have that yet.
Yeah.
And they might, but I mean, still, it's like PlayStation's got all these buzz things to keep buzz constantly going.
As a tech guy, Craig the tech teacher.
Which we derailed, really.
I know, big time. I think really we've answered the question, so we can keep talking.
It doesn't actually matter as far as games go.
But it does.
But it does.
It doesn't matter, but no, it does matter.
In consumer mindset,
it matters in certain situations.
Okay.
I think. Frame rate, of course, matters at 30 or lower.
Oh, yeah.
It matters immensely. Because your eyeball, I think it's at 24 frames is when it starts to be a little awkward.
A film is in 24 frames.
And then as soon as you go lower than 24, then it starts to really suck.
But film is different than games.
Okay. Well, so either way, it matters.
Resolution, you got that input thing, and you're actually in it. So
resolution, I think, doesn't really matter until you get to a bigger screen.
Yeah, I can see that.
Unless you want more screen real estate, which you don't want as many menu bars and crap.
See, I guess the problem where, again, we've kind of said it, but the real problem is where it does matter is in the consumer mind is going into this generation, assumed that would be like rung zero. Like this was this was just a given. It's going to be 1080p because this one wasn't.
Yes. Yeah.
And then when it wasn't, it's like, well, why not?
It was just somebody needs to get fired for that. Still, I don't know if anybody has, but somebody should be fired for that. That was just.
They need to huddle.
All right, Jerry's out.
Come up with something cool.
Jerry's out. Throw Jerry out. He's fired.
No, I'm sorry though.
So what do you guys think? Does frame rate and resolution?
This is the best thing Microsoft has right now.
Oh man, the controller's so awesome.
This controller is still better. Sorry.
So good. I haven't tried the Steam one yet though.
I haven't tried that either.
I'm excited about that.
But
what do you guys think about resolution and frame rates? Do they matter? Are you a hardcore gamer?
I don't know. Are you?